Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another Random Thoughts podcast and another Red5network Roundup, this time for July. We're slowly getting caught up. I didn't have a lot of stuff in July, so we're going to go through this one a bit quicker, and then I will finally give my thoughts on Thor Love and Thunder. I finally watched it in September, but since a lot of the podcasts were about it, back here in July, and I finally listened to them, kind of give my general thoughts. Um, uh, but to start off, ATSW. Uh, you guys came in and you were talking about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and really you put it up against War Games, and you kind of thought, well, War Games wins hands down. I'm sorry, War Games is okay, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off is like pure 80s. Like it's right up there with Back to the Future. And it is like when you're talking about like an 80s family friendly, like not something because definitely Terminator and Escape from New York, and like there's all those like action comedy, like that is 80s action comedy or action, uh, you know, it's just kind of the feel. But when it comes to like the movies we watched as kids during that time period, and what represents that, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like everybody wanted to be Ferris Bueller, like just the idea of skipping out of school, having this epic, wild day, and just like his total carefree. It was so cool. So cool. I probably, as someone who was a huge Godzilla fan, like when that really considered bad Godzilla is a guilty pleasure of mine in the 90s, just because I like this actor so good from Ferris Bueller's Day Off that it was like so cool to see him in a role, because I hadn't really seen him in much after this, but he did just such a great job. This is such a great movie. Um, I I watch this movie regularly. I don't know if I probably watched War Games once in the 90s, but it's kind of, for me, stayed in the 80s, whereas Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I watched that recently, like within the last 5 years. It's a regular movie for me. So hands down, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Just hands down. Okay, Sidebar Cantina. You did a podcast on the Shadow of the Sith sequel book, that is a prequel to Rise of Skywalker. Um, and it came out at the time. It was interesting. Like some of the stuff that you brought out, like they were interesting points and stuff of how it helped explain Palpatine Return. A lot of people have a problem with the whole Palpatine Return, and I had a problem with the fact that it was revealed in a Fortnite game. Um, I had a problem that like that whole line wasn't part of the crawl, or like the message wasn't how it started, or a trailer, that it was in a Fortnite game. Um, but as somebody who liked the expanded universe, Palpatine returns. Now, yes, I would have liked better explanation, but I had no problem with him returning. And all the people were like, "Oh, it makes Vader's sacrifice completely useless." No, it didn't. Now, in the movie, like he seems a whole lot more powerful than he was when Vader threw him on. So yeah, in some respects, like, oh no, I just kicked back and built a bigger army than I had before with thousands of Star Destroyers. Like, yes, that jumped the shark, but the fact that Palpatine returned wasn't bad. Um, so I liked that this like filled in a lot of the stuff, and in my mind, the Last Jedi just does not fit. So much of the Rise of Skywalker is like course correcting from the Last Jedi, from what and to those that love the Last Jedi, like I'm not saying like, oh, it retconned it, because it didn't. It did not retcon the Last Jedi. it tried to course correct based on fan feedback. You could tell that, like, it almost seemed like there was in addition to its checklist of inclusivity, all that kind of stuff that everybody complained, like, there was a checklist of, okay, Luke's got to talk about how important the lightsaber is, check. We need to show a situation of, I'm trying to think, like a bigger bad guy, Palpatine, okay, check. We need to have this, check. It was just kind of, and then there were a couple of things. Oh, people didn't like Rose Tico, or we're going to put her in the background, check. Which I would have much preferred them to make her a likable character than just relegate her and make it pointless that we spent any of that time in The Last Jedi. At the time, The Rise of Skywalker is what I asked for, but what Colin Trevorrow was doing, which was building off of The Last Jedi with his script that's been leaked, I think that would have been so much better, because it would have retroactively made The Last Jedi a better pill to swallow. It still would have been a bad movie in the middle. But you look at, like, the prequels. Episode 2 is in so many ways a bad movie. Now, there are great moments in that movie. There are moments that I could clip out, like just those highlights, put them together, and that's a fun little 15, 20 minutes. I'm not very kind to that movie. That is my least liked. And I'm not even a fan of episode 3. Mostly because of that movie. It drags episode. But most fans that didn't like episode 2 at the time went out, saw episode 3, and then they were totally hyped. They're like, boom, they saved it at the end. And then all of a sudden, episode 2, I knew people who just hated on episode 2, and when episode 3 came out, suddenly they liked episode 2 again. When they hated it before. And the reason for that was, like, episode 3 gave them what they needed to fill that. If if episode 9 made the last, like, took that to an interesting place, like, built off of that, I think retroactively it would have made fans that are upset with the sequel trilogy have an easier time understanding that there are people who are fans of the sequel trilogy. I think we would have been more accepting, like, oh, this is not my Star Wars, I think it's kind of bad, but I get why you like it, and it's your Star Wars, and we accept it. But having a movie that sets stuff up, followed by a movie that doesn't follow through on any of the stuff that's set up. It doesn't actively go in, but, Finn being lightsaber, like, none of that's followed up on. None of the character growth seen in that carries over. And just in a lot of ways, deconstructs not only the OT characters, but the new characters, kind of really brings them down to a low place. And then you get another movie that tries to take those things. It was like, oh, people didn't like Rose Tico and Finn, so they have to announce, oh, they're just friends. She's been friend zoned. Check. Like, stuff like that just makes, when you see the scene in The Last Jedi, when they have, like, that whole romantic, and there's that really awkward kiss, the fact that they have no relationship after that he friend zones her, like, just makes that much worse. But it's interesting. One of the things that I have been a big supporter of, that I know a lot of fans are like, no. I am somebody who rage quit over the prequels. Like, I walked out of episode 3. I either sold off, threw away, got rid of all my action figures, all my collectibles, everything, all the books. I had almost a near complete collection of the EU books. I just threw them out. I was getting married, and I wasn't going to have the room for it anyways. But, like, I didn't even, I remember I threw the books out. I gave the action figures I sold, the Legos I let my brother have. And I threw away like all the episode 1 soda cans, and I had the pizza box and the Taco Bell cups and stuff. I kept all of that, threw it in the trash after having stored it for years. I was done. And about all I kept was like the OT trilogy in widescreen, unedited, not the with all the special effects on DVD. I had that and I kept that. Um, but outside of that, I didn't really keep anything else. Um, I then, when Disney took over Star Wars, it got me intrigued because I had said, you know what, I'm a Star Trek, I'm a Stargate fan, I'm not Star Wars. So, but then I got back in, and that's when I watched the Clone Wars, and I had watched the Clone Wars cartoon movie, and didn't like that, and so I had no interest in checking that out. But then, I thought everyone's talking about all this lore, everybody's going crazy about this new show Rebels and how it ties into Clone, and so I thought, okay, I'm getting back into the fandom, I had to check it out. And the Clone Wars cartoon made me have an appreciation for the prequels, because I kind of liked episode 1. There were things I didn't like about it. Some of the kiddie stuff, the kid that got to play Anakin was too young in my opinion. There were just some stuff that was just, yeah. But it felt like Star Wars. Episode 2 and 3 I didn't like at all. Episode 2 I hated with a passion, and I was very vocal about it. It was fun to be a Star Trek fan at that point in time and just make fun of the Star Wars fans. It was just my thing. Yeah, wouldn't believe it. I was toxic, or whatever they want to call it. It was just my thing at the time, where I was at in my fandom, which is, but the Clone Wars cartoon, I now like the prequel era. I don't necessarily like those movies, but I accept that they happened. A version of those movies happens in my head when I think of what's the canon to Star Wars. Now, the I hate sand and some of that really bad dialogue, and let's try spinning, that's a good trick. Like, all those corny things, like, that, to me, like, that gets wiped out of canon. I don't, but the basic plot lines of what happened, and I want to see that happen with the sequel trilogy. I want a cartoon. Now, everybody, when I say this, goes, well, we had Resistance. No, I don't want Resistance. I want a Clone Wars. I want a show done by, like, Dave Filoni that fleshes out Rey, Finn, and Poe, gives us good interaction with Leia, Han, and Luke, and Lando, because we can do that in animation. They don't have to still be alive or looking young or whatever. We can show them whatever. Let's do Kylo better, because one of the things that the Clone Wars cartoon did Anakin so much better. Kylo was one of my biggest things about the sequels. He was just such a whiny little. I could not stand it, and so I think they could do him so well in animation, give him so much depth as a character. The weird character thing between Rey and Kylo, and almost being like, that was super weird. But why don't we build on that and make it make more sense in a drawn out cartoon? Because episode 8 to 9, there's a time period. There's no time period to do between 7 and 8, but we have a time period after that, so they could do a little prequel before 7, maybe, with some of what was going on with Kylo and Luke and all that. Maybe in flashbacks. That's a popular thing in Star Trek, or Star Wars now. Although I think they're doing it in Star Trek too. Flashbacks. Suddenly everybody's got to have flashbacks. It's like a late delayed thing to Lost. Maybe it was Arrow. Maybe everybody wants to be the CW. I mean, the Book of Boba Fett surely felt like it could have been a CW production. Anyways, I'm getting way long-winded. They talked about this Shadow of the Sith book, and everything they're talking about, like, I'm going like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. The problem is they're doing it in books. Comics is a little bit better, and some of the sequel comics haven't, like the Knights of Ren comic thing wasn't that great. And I believe they said they're going to be covering that soon. But you know, I've heard mixed reviews on that. But this book sounded really good. We need that fleshed out in a medium that more people are consuming. Now, not everybody consumes the cartoons, but a vast majority more consume cartoons than they do books. And so that's what I want. I want something that can be healing in that way. Everybody's like, oh, they got to either retcon it or retcon. Look, I said that about the prequels. And I said Star Wars was dead, and Star Wars is never gonna be special again. And guess what? The moment I saw the Mandalorian look into Baby Yoda's eyes, and the little Grogu there in the first episode of Star Wars was special again. You cannot Star Wars, the Clone Wars, Rebels, there's so many moments in Rebels when I just get chills. And then season 7, and I think it was season 5, with all the stuff with Mandalore and Ahsoka and Darth Maul, like all of that stuff, just so good. And so no, Star Wars isn't dead. And I feel like a lot of people that are just really angry, and they're going to be angry, and they're going to continue to be angry for maybe another 5 or 10 years, and they're going to rage against everything that Disney does, but they're going to come around, and they're going to hit a point where they just go, I like Star Wars. I like the Death Star run. I like this. There's obviously things that I'm not going to say that they're going to start liking The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker or any of that. But they're going to, in general, just be like, I like Star Wars. I want to have lightsabers on display. I want to have an X-Wing Lego. I want to play video games. That's going to come back. All this, everything Star Wars has just been... There's just going to be a thing where, Star Wars memes, that's going to become cool again. They're not going to be like, oh, Star Wars is dead. It's old. And so I really like to say thank you to the Sidebar Cantina for bringing this book to my attention. I got a lot of other things I'm supposed to read, but I may check this one out. Okay, that was way long-winded for that. War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. What is canon and who gets to decide? Officially, Disney gets to decide. But that's not the fun answer. Because guess what? Disney's retconning Disney. If they did a better job about keeping track of canon, I would probably be all for the, you know what, you just have to go with it, that's canon. And to some extent, yes, when new content is coming out, you have to go, okay, if they're going to set something past the time of the Rise of Skywalker or during the time of that or leading up to the events of that, that is in official canon. So don't get upset if something that sets up the sequel trilogy appears in Mandalorian. That doesn't take away from the Mandalorian being good, because some version of that has to happen in official canon. If you don't want to accept that, just ignore what's going to happen. But having something that hints that, oh, they're making Snoke clones or something that's not a bad thing. That is Disney sticking to universe canon, and helping to answer fans that had a problem with how did Palpatine return? Where did Snoke come from? It's not a bad thing. If they tell the story well, then you can enjoy everything right up to The Force Awakens, or you like however you feel about it. And it could be like me, like I was just mentioning with I don't like episode 2, but the main events of episode 2 in my head happened. That's part of my canon. All the stuff that makes me not like that didn't happen. It's harder to do that sometimes with the sequels, but it is what it is. Now, the OT, like the Thrawn trilogy, will always be my sequel trilogy, and I do hope that like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni do an excellent job bringing Thrawn in and doing some version of that. But the EU had some bad books in it. This is that. Now, the one thing that frustrates me is that they got this storybook group, and you are having TV shows contradicting cartoons, cartoons contradicting comic books that are contradicting books, all released under Disney. That's frustrating. Nothing. The whole point of getting rid of the EU, of starting fresh, like it really felt like they got rid of the EU because either they didn't want to have to pay George certain licensing, or they really didn't, or whoever the writers, that came up with these characters licensing. But it really just feels like they didn't want to have the Solo kids. They wanted to create Rey and Ben, and they didn't want to have them because they're totally based off of the two Solo twins. They totally are. And if you didn't make their whole arrangement romantic and made them like separated and had Ben be the character on the books that, fell to the dark side but was a Solo kid, which is what the story they're going with, but have Rey be like this other twin that was good. Maybe Han and them had to put her on this planet to keep her safe, keep her hidden from her brother, but do it, so they're the same age. She's not younger than him. And have them have that duality, that connection. They're going back and forth, but it's more about that. I mean, see, they could have massaged the canon. They could have said, oh, well, he was stolen as a kid, and the Snoke character is totally a stand-in for Sabaoth. It's just, they do these things, and it's just, it would have been so easy to do the exact, almost same movies they did, and just name a few characters different, change their personality, or not personality, but just change their relationship with everybody just a little bit. But they could have done a lot of the same beats and kept previous canon and said, you know what, all of these are legends. Maybe they happened, maybe they didn't, but these are still the three Solo kids. This is still, something similar to this. Luke's still married to Mary Jade. A strong female character, have her come in there. Why they didn't do that and make it so it is legends. It's maybe this happened, maybe it didn't if it contradicts. But now it's like, no. They just have one kid. He's named Ben, not these three other kids. They didn't like have Ben like a decade after them. Like he's already this age. So those other three kids, they don't exist. So any book about them like that automatically makes that book not exist. So I say, do whatever canon makes you happy. Like, you want to accept something in your head as Star Wars, accept it as Star Wars. If something makes you angry, to you, it's not Star Wars. Then it's not Star Wars. So that's what I say, is you get to decide what's canon. So War of the Stars, Star Wars Podcast, they had a great discussion about that. Go check it out back in July. So you got to scroll down a bit because I know I'm bad at getting these things out on time. WSTR did a highlight on Harrison Ford and all the different characters he's played. To me, he will always be Indy, not Han. Even though Han, like of the main trio of Han, Luke, and Leia, Han is my favorite of those three. I thought he was so cool. However, he is Indiana Jones to me. That's who I think of. Yes, he's Decker. Yes, he's Han, but he's Indiana Jones to me. And you kind of like glossed over, but Cowboys and Aliens. He did that alongside the guy that's I'm spacing on his name. He's just retired as James Bond, but Daniel Craig. They were excellent in that movie. I thought his character was so good, and it was interesting to see him doing that late in life and being able to pull off the action because he just was not there for Indiana Jones 4. So to see him do that was really good. I would have loved for them to like follow that up with kind of like cowboys and dinosaurs and kind of do like a Valley of the Guanji type thing, but with modern special effects. But now at this point, I think Harrison Ford has hit a point where he can't do something like that. But you know what? If in the chance that he is actually awesome in action in Indiana Jones 5, I am totally going to start campaigning that they do another Cowboys and Aliens because Daniel Craig could do it easily. After the weekend, you guys talked about Jurassic Park, and I absolutely love this movie. And a few of you were kind of a little bit of a naysayer on this, that you thought the original Jurassic Park didn't hold up as much. I highly disagree. Like, it is a bit slower. That's true. However, I like the kids. The kids, I think, are perfectly done in this. There is just something about this movie, despite its slowness, that captivates me from the very beginning to the very end. This is, for me, I would say, a perfect movie. Like, I put this up there with stuff like A New Hope, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park. Like, for me, like the Indiana Jones movies, I'm one of those people that thinks all three Indiana Jones movies are perfect. I'm almost there on Star Wars, though I will say that I think A New Hope is completely perfect. As I've matured, I like Empire Strikes Back. As a kid, I didn't care for it too much. So there's just this little piece of me that I know it's the best one, but I can't call it perfect. And then I have the opposite effect with Return of the Jedi. When I was a kid, I thought it was the best one. And as an adult, I can realize how it's a little more Canadian, and the special edition version, I absolutely hate and detest. I feel like they ruined what was great about that movie. Give me my ending celebration. Redo Jabba Palace back. Like, I did not like how they changed that. But, the first, I am a huge fan of Back to the Future 2. I understand how it hasn't aged as well. And I've grown a more appreciation, but those are kind of like perfect movies. Terminator 2 is another one. Like, there's a handful of movies from like the 80s and 90s that and 70s that I think are like just like the perfect movie. And Jurassic Park is one of them, and it's one of the newest ones. I think like after Jurassic Park, I don't know if there's a perfect movie. The closest that would come to it is gonna be a Marvel movie. Like, 89 Batman to me is a perfect movie. Maybe the original Superman. Like there's the original Planet of the Apes. Like, there's a handful. I would say the Undiscovered Country, but honestly, as I'm thinking about it, I think it goes from Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park, and like the next perfect movie for me might be Iron Man or the original Avengers. Like, there's a couple in the MCU that I hold to that standard, but like in the in between of that, like there was a good decade to 15 years where there were a lot of movies I enjoyed, but they weren't, to me, perfect movies. But Jurassic Park was kind of like the end of the era. It was like the late tail end of like all of these amazing movies that started in the 70s, rocked through the 80s, and then like the Jurassic Park was like that last big hurrah. And a lot of that is because Jurassic Park made possible stuff. It's kind of like the original Planet of the Apes. I have an affinity for that, but it was Star Wars that really blew the whole industry open. But Planet of the Apes made Star Wars possible in a lot of ways, like the costuming, the merchandising, all that stuff that went, when the world went ape crazy, so to speak, set the stage for Star Wars in the same vein that Star Trek did. But yeah, I really think like Jurassic Park was like, it created the world of CGI. Like, even though it was so much practical, the way they were able to influence with CGI created, okay, that's when the prequels and the all that stuff, like everything all of a sudden became CGI, and stuff just became mediocre and bad. It was more about the CGI effects, because suddenly they could do everything, and they were so interested in pursuing whether they could. They didn't stop and think whether they should. Yep. Jurassic Park. Perfect movie. Okay. Just a few little tidbits of things. I'm going to say I missed out on being able to go to Scarif Con, but you guys look like you had a blast. Like, every year I see like the videos you stream from Scarif Con, and I'm like, man, that looks so much fun. So congratulations to everybody that got to go out there. I'm hoping, like, in my situation, I'm on the complete other end of the coast, and in all honesty, it is really hard for me to get away for multiple days to do something like that, between family, a business that pretty much closes down when I'm not there, and all that. Plus, I have some friends that on the East Coast, in New York City, that I have been promising. I got some in Michigan that I've been promising. The one in Michigan, he's gonna die soon. I need to go see him. My friend in New York, like, I desperately want to go visit him. So if I paid a plane ticket just to go out, but man, I really want to go to Scarif Con. And then, COVID and all that made it even worse, but well, the last couple of years. But then this year, it was not in the cards. Hopefully next year. But congratulations to another successful Scarif Con. And then it was better than ever before. Some new things in the Red 5 network. We have the Red 5 Tavern. Now, I've never played D&D. I've wanted to play, like, there's a Stargate version of D&D now. There's like other versions of sci-fi, because I'm not really into fantasy. But you guys, I've just been kind of tuning in here and there just to kind of get an understanding of, like, what does it mean to play these kind of games. And this has been really fun. This is an interesting endeavor and a wonderful way for the Red 5 network to expand. So congratulations to starting that out. On the top of that, I didn't talk about it before when it came out, but the addition of Red 5 Gaming, another different branch of the Red 5 network. And I want to say Extra Techy has been doing his Mario Kart videos, and I know he's had his class of students that he's been, gaming professionally with them with Mario Kart. And but then, like, doing stuff like marbles and jackbox, and this is just such fun content, because immediately I thought, okay, Red 5 Gaming, it's going to be all the Red 5 network playing Star Wars games all the time. Maybe we'll get some fantasy games or something like that, but I didn't think marbles. And Mario Kart. Like, I am a Nintendo and Sega nerd. I like the retro stuff. So you're playing Mario Kart, like that's just fun. Unfortunately, you're playing it on Wednesday nights. I'm a minister, and I conduct a Bible class on study on Wednesday nights. That like I have a prerequisite requirement to be there. So it's like the one night I can't join in the fun, and I've got to switch. So, if that switches up days, let me know. But congratulations to that. Now, Thor, Love, and Thunder. So that recaps our Red 5 network. We're going to get into Thor, Love, and Thunder. And it was interesting. I think, first of all, ATSW, the Escape Pod, they said on the scale of 1 being being Iron Man 2, and 10 being Endgame. Before we get into this review, first off, Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 are way worse than Iron Man 2. So if we're going to do a scale of what's 1, that is Thor 2. Dark World. That is... And if we're going to go 10, I'm sorry, but Endgame's not a 10 for me. Infinity War's a 10. Some of the other Avenger movies I would say is a 10. But Endgame was a letdown after Infinity War. Yes, the theater experience, there were some of the hypest moments. But that was because we were so jazzed up. But after the fact, like going back, Infinity War, Endgame's kind of like an 8. Like, it's good, but it's not great. It's not like the best, like the top of the crop. That's just me. But it was more by what you put as the lowest. I was kind of surprised. So anyways, where would I put this? Well, I would put Thor Love and Thunder 5.5, 6. I thought the humor was going to be way too much. There were certain things with like Lady Thor and stuff like that. Didn't mind Lady Thor one bit. I did mind the whole Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, Zeus's thing, like that lightning bolt. That weird like romance with his weapon. That was just weird. That didn't belong there. I didn't need to see, when he's in that arena before all the celestial god beings or whatever being exposed naked. I didn't need to see his butt. Just the screaming goats outstayed their welcome. But I think the overall story that, and I will say, I am alone on this hill. I know I am, but I do not like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I really do not like the Guardians of the Galaxy because I don't like them in the comics. And I will acknowledge, like, Chris Pratt is great as Star-Lord and stuff like that, but he was the low point of Infinity War. Like, if there was one flaw with Infinity War, it was the Guardians of the Galaxy. That prevents, like, makes me still go, you know what? I think Avengers is better. I think I like that. I think I like the previous Avenger movies better than Infinity War, just a tad bit because of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Their comics suck, so I don't like them. You cannot make the Guardians of the Galaxy cool to me, and the fact that suddenly the whole world over, just because they like James Gunn's style of humor, thinks that they're amazing. That's right, which is funny because all these same people that think they're amazing don't like Taika Waititi's, well, not all of them, that's generalizing, but a lot of the ones that don't like Taika Waititi's humor do like James Gunn's humor. And I'm just like, Taika Waititi is so much more skilled than James Gunn. And this has had nothing to do with his jokes or whatever. I don't care about any of that. I just don't really care for his movies. And his, like that. Overall, the story was actually very decently good. The definition of what is a god in the Marvel Universe and the whole thing with the Valhalla in the end. I have liked that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has kept it like gods that like they just have science that we don't understand, and like these other realms and stuff. Well, they're just like alternate dimension, other planes of like, but they're accessible through science and portals and all this kind of stuff. The moment they're like, oh no, these are all the gods, and well, it was weird. It felt a little out of character for Marvel, but that's what they've been going towards. It was interesting, like seeing them all there, but the core story with what's her name, Natalie Portman. I'm trying to think of her character's name all of a sudden. I'm not typically a Thor fan, the Avengers is what made me a Thor fan. I didn't like the comics. I don't like him as a character concept. I never did. But I just really liked how he, and I didn't like him in his initial two movies, but I really liked how he was with the rest of the Avengers and the chemistry he had. I just, yeah, I didn't hate this movie. I didn't love this movie. There was enough about this movie that I felt like it took. Ragnarok was the perfect. And I feel like what they did is they just let Taika Waititi go loose with the property. Because, like, Ragnarok was a huge success for them. And it pulled in Avenger type numbers. Like, it did really well. And so they're like, well, great, let this guy just go loose, be him. That's what people want. No, when he was reined in, like, that was pushing the limit. I know a lot of people that don't like that movie because they felt like it went too far. It made Thor a joke to them. I don't feel that way. I think that was perfect Thor. Because I didn't like what came before. It felt so out of place in the MCU. But this took that and say, you know, if that was going to 11, that was taking Thor maybe just a teensy bit too far for some. This is going to 20. You know, this is taking it way farther. So while a bunch of it is perfectly fine, and the whole rant about the Guardians of the Galaxy, I really actually like how they're instituted in this. I like how they leave the thing. I just, all in all, they didn't bother me at all in this. And when he, like, gets out and he's going in and, like, the rock music is playing and he goes, I thought, like, that was all funny. But then the goat joke came in. And then there was just so much of this movie that that was like, oh. But you know what? I would still say 80% of it I loved. 80% of it I loved. But the stuff I didn't really dragged it down. So, like I said, you know, maybe a 6. It's middle of the road MCU for me. Kind of right around where Black Widow put. Black Widow, I really didn't like what they did with Taskmaster. There was a couple of decisions I didn't like that, but overall that was a fun movie. But it, like, there were some of these few things that, like, bring it down from being a great MCU movie. So, but for all of those people feeling like it was another nail in the MCU coffin, it was really bad. No, I thought it was overall middle of the road MCU. Now, we've been getting a lot of middle of the road, a little bit of bad, and depending on who you talk to, like, but I think in general, a lot of it's been middle of the road for the majority of people. Like, there's some people that are, like, hating everything, and there's some people that are loving everything. But I really feel like the majority of the Marvel audience is like, this is a lot of middle of the road. The hype is not there like it was before, but despite what people say, it's a lot of people are watching this stuff on Disney Plus. They're not going to the movie theater right now because it's going to be on Disney Plus in 30 days. That's what I did. I wasn't going to go to the theater for this. If it was going to be 6 months, yeah, I would have gone to the theater for it. So that's just the truth. But I didn't watch it day one. There's been so much negative talk about this from certain circles that I listen to. But you know what? There were a few that had positive talk about it, and in the end, I think it was an okay movie. If I was doing a MCU rewatch, like, there's certain movies I don't rewatch, this would be one I'd rewatch if I was doing a whole from beginning to end rewatch. So that to me says it's a decent movie. All right, that is ending this roundup. Once again, said I was going to be quick. Semi-sheets. Man, my next month one of Red 5 Roundup is got like 2 pages, so that one's probably going to go on and on and on and on. Be like a couple hours. Who knows? All right, with that, hope everybody has a good day, and I'll catch you in the next video.